This is what training a daughter-in-law looks like.
Finally, the day of the engagement ceremony arrived, likely to be the most humiliating experience yet. When we were shown into an obnoxiously grand living room, I was taken aback by the scene. There were 4 chairs with 4 takeout steaks set up. One portion was missing. I exchanged a glance with John and nodded. Well, we're leaving.
Me too.
What?
Mary let out a dumbfounded noise at the sudden declaration. We had planned to let family interactions fade out gradually, but at this point, it was clear that a quiet disappearance wasn't going to work. In that case, a complete and final break was the only option.
Don't think you can ever come back here again.
We wouldn't dream of it.
You'll regret this, mark my words.
Ignoring their shouting, we calmly got into the car and left John's family home behind. My name is Catherine, and I'm 35 years old. My parents passed away when I was young, so I've been alone in the world. But thanks to a scholarship program, I was able to graduate from college. I've lived my life without any major issues up to this point. And now, a big turning point has arrived in my life. Just recently, my boyfriend since college, John, proposed to me. Naturally, I happily accepted. However, for someone like me who doesn't have family, marriage feels like an unknown event, and I don't have many experienced people around to ask for advice. One challenging event is the engagement ceremony. Until now, he hadn't talked much about his family, but suddenly he asked me to meet them. As I nodded in agreement, somewhat unsure, John looked at me with a strangely apologetic expression. I would soon find out exactly why. About a week before the engagement ceremony, the door intercom rang unexpectedly. John and I had been living together, but with the wedding approaching, we decided to buy a house. We were in the middle of packing, so the place was a bit of a mess.
What could that be?
I'll check. We weren't expecting any visitors today, and I hadn't ordered anything online recently. Could it be an early wedding gift from someone? I hope it's not someone I'd have to invite inside. I looked at the intercom's camera. A man and a woman I didn't recognize appeared on the screen. Who might you be? It didn't seem to be a delivery or a wedding gift. As I tilted my head in confusion, a sharp voice came through the speaker.
Who might you be? Don't be ridiculous. Open the door now. Don't you feel ashamed treating family this way, even if it's just by marriage?
I'm not talking to you. Bring John out here. That idiot. Just when I thought he was aimless, he goes and marries some useless woman.
He's such an embarrassment to our family.
Stunned by the barrage of words, I watched as John, who had been packing, hurried over to me.
It looks like my brother Charles and his wife Sarah are here. Sorry for the surprise.
Looking genuinely sad, John quickly headed to the door. As he unlocked it, Charles and Sarah barged in without a greeting.
What a cramped place. It's cluttered, and it lacks class. I'm glad we came. Who knows what kind of mess you'd create without proper guidance.
So you're John's fiancée, Catherine. Just as I'd heard, you've got that poor look about you.
I've had my share of encounters with people who act high-handed, given that I have no family. But it's been a while since I've met anyone quite this blatant. John stepped in front of me protectively as I found myself at a loss for words.
Charles, Sarah, you should have called before coming. We have our own plans, you know.
Why should I, the eldest, have to check in with you?
These two couldn't have been more different from John, who was kind and polite. Knowing they were his family, I could see why he hadn't talked about them much. Ideally, he would have preferred to go through with the wedding without involving them at all. Out of respect, John had asked me if he could inform his family about our engagement.
You might end up feeling uncomfortable.
He had warned me then, so I'd mentally prepared myself. But I was realizing now that I hadn't prepared nearly enough. It must have been hard for John, given his nature, to speak poorly of his family. That was his way of looking out for me as best as he could. There I was, feeling overwhelmed, while John looked tormented, caught between his family and me. Unbothered by our discomfort, Sarah glared at me.
More importantly, we came all the way here, didn't we? The least you could do is offer us something to drink.
I was stunned by her selfish remarks, but I didn't want to feel any more uncomfortable. I gave John's shoulder a light tap, as if to signal him not to argue. It's okay. I quickly served them some coffee and snacks we had on hand. They plopped down on the couch, looking around as if assessing the place.
Couldn't you at least tidy up the boxes? I feel like I can barely breathe, and these snacks and coffee are so low quality. I can't even stomach this stuff.
Imagine if people knew this was our brother's home. It's embarrassing. I'm the CEO of a company, for crying out loud. You two are in a completely different league from us.
As they criticized the coffee and snacks, they went on and on about their lives as a CEO and CEO's wife, surrounded by nothing but top-quality things.
Someone is poor and family less, as you should feel lucky to join a family like ours. You'd better understand that and show some gratitude.
And you too, John. You're only here because you were lucky enough to be born under my wing. That's how you even made it to college. Be careful how you act.
They looked down on not only me but also John, their own blood relative, with that same arrogant attitude. It was as if they were enjoying belittling us both.
Yes, unlike you two, we come from a respectable family. So when you come to our house, make sure to behave properly.
Sarah said, glaring at me with a smirk.
Especially you. Catherine, was it? Given your poor upbringing, don't open your mouth unless spoken to. Only answer when asked a direct question. It's really presumptuous for someone like you to speak with the upper class like us.
An upper class. I never imagined anyone would actually refer to themselves like that. Sarah said this with complete confidence, though her values seemed out of another era. John was on the verge of yelling at Charles and Sarah for their rude behavior, but I repeatedly calmed him down and got him to hold back.
I'm so sorry, Catherine. I should have explained more.
It's okay. It's not my first time meeting people like that. You must have had a hard time too, John. Let's just go out for dinner tonight. After Charles and Sarah finally left, I tried to lift John's spirits with a smile, renewing my own resolve. While I was saddened by the fact that John's family turned out to be so unpleasant, I figured we'd be fine if we simply avoided contact with them in the future. Since they were willing to accept our marriage, we could go through with the engagement ceremony as a formality and then quietly fade out of the family interactions. If John's father were still around, things might have been more complicated. But as he had already passed away, issues like heirs and inheritance didn't seem to be a concern. John and I had been together for a long time, but this was the first time any relatives had meddled. I knew they weren't usually interested in John. It was just a matter of enduring it this once. It seemed John felt the same.
Once this is all over, you won't have to deal with the relatives again.
Yeah, thanks. In other words, just a bit more patience. We reassured ourselves with that thought, and it allowed us to find some peace that evening. 2 days after Charles and Sarah unexpectedly came over, John got a call from his mother, Mary.
What? What's that supposed to mean?
For several minutes, I could hear raised voices as if they were arguing, and eventually, John, looking completely drained, came over to me after ending the call. What happened?
My mom said she wants me to repay her for raising me. She claims it's $300,000.
What? That's insane. Even I, with no close family, could tell how strange this was for a parent-child conversation. And $300,000? That's not exactly a sum anyone could easily pay back.
Let's put off responding for now and come up with a plan.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I feel like it's been one hassle after another since I proposed. Don't worry about it. I'm fine, and you should try to relax too. It's money he doesn't need to repay. Even I can see that much. But John seemed too shaken by his mother's demand to think clearly. To help him settle down, I encouraged him to get some rest early that night. However, things didn't go as smoothly as I'd hoped. The next day, Mary showed up unannounced at our door.
Hurry up and open the door. Pay my cab fare.
Hearing her start off by demanding money right at the entrance left me completely speechless. Feeling a familiar sense of exhaustion, similar to what I felt with Charles and Sarah, I made an effort to stay calm.
You should at least let us know before you come over. Isn't that common courtesy?
John, looking thoroughly worn out, replied to Mary with a sharp tone. Not pleased with his attitude, Mary scowled and raised her voice.
Are you saying you're too busy to make time for your own mother? Have you forgotten all I've done for you? How ungrateful can you be?
Mary wailed dramatically, loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. Her high-pitched voice was headache-inducing, making both John and me wince. When we didn't respond, Mary's performance intensified.
You've been fooled by this strange woman and are now neglecting your own family. Ever since you got with someone like her, you've completely changed.
She finally pointed at me and started yelling insults, and I couldn't help but let out a sigh. John seemed to have reached his breaking point and shouted back at Mary just as loudly.
Enough already.
Mary looked momentarily shocked, clearly not expecting him to yell back, and fell silent. But she quickly regained her composure and started wailing even louder.
I came all this way just to see John, and this is how I'm treated.
I had been living with John for a long time, and during that time, none of his family had ever bothered to check in on him. It's as if they only play the family card when it's convenient for them, and I can't understand what they're trying to achieve.
I come to visit, and you can't even show a little gratitude. Couldn't you at least treat me to lunch? That's basic courtesy.
She conveniently ignored the fact that she'd shown up unannounced, making quite the demand. But now I knew how to quiet her down. All she wanted was a fancy meal on someone else's dime.
I am the widow of the former CEO. I won't be satisfied with the kind of food you two usually eat.
For someone who flaunts her status, she's quite shameless. I sighed quietly and turned to Mary. Thank you for coming. Is there anything in particular you'd like to eat, or any restaurant you'd prefer?
Now you're speaking my language.
As if the previous commotion had never happened, Mary stood up. She picked the most expensive upscale restaurant in the area. She'd probably researched it in advance.
I'm so sorry, Catherine.
John whispered to me, clearly embarrassed. I couldn't bring myself to blame him. He must have endured these difficult relatives ever since he was a child. It's fine. Let's just get her to leave as soon as possible. Once we ate, she'd likely finish her business and leave. However, Mary's disruptive behavior didn't end there. In the quiet restaurant, she continued making loud, snide remarks about us throughout the entire meal.
Well, look at that. Nowadays, even someone as poor as you can get into a place like this if you have the money.
I could tolerate the insults, but her crude behavior in such a public setting was beyond humiliating for anyone sharing the table with her.
I'm talking about you, Catherine. Your manners are atrocious. No class, no decorum. Honestly, it's embarrassing to even sit at the same table.
The look the waiter gave Mary, as though he couldn't believe what he was witnessing, made me want to disappear. I was mortified. How can she act like this without caring about anyone else's stares?
And John, what do you even see in a woman like her? Look at you too, with that gloomy face, ruining the whole meal.
Even as she spoke, Mary didn't stop eating. She kept clearing each course of the lunch menu as it was served, eyeing us with a judgmental glare. If only I had come here with Charles and Sarah instead. I should have just come alone at least. John kept trying to stand up from his chair, and each time I gently urged him to stay calm. I somehow managed to maintain a smile until we finished the meal.
Make sure you pay for my cab fare.
Yes, of course. Ignoring her arrogant attitude, I maintained a polite smile as I saw her off. I handed cash to the taxi the restaurant had called for her and gave my business card, asking them to bill me for any extra fare if needed. Mary was already reclining in the back seat, paying no attention to our exchange.
I really hope she doesn't come back. I feel like I didn't even get to eat lunch.
After everything was finally over, John slumped onto the sofa, completely drained. That must have been tough. You grew up around Mary and Charles, right? I can't believe you managed to endure it. Not only did he avoid adopting their worldview, but he also made it this far without any emotional turmoil. I was genuinely impressed, and John gave me a slight, self-deprecating smile.
They were pretty hands-off, really. I was lucky to have good friends, teachers, and other people around me. From middle school on, I barely went home.
I see.
And you, Catherine, you're amazing to put up with people like that. Saying you've encountered other difficult people means you've met more than your share of absurd personalities. I think that's even more impressive.
It seemed we'd both faced our fair share of challenges. We shared a laugh and decided to take a well-deserved rest. Finally, the day of the engagement ceremony arrived, likely to be the most humiliating experience yet. Pushing myself to keep moving, I accompanied John to his family's home, where, as expected, Mary, Charles, and Sarah greeted us with their usual arrogance.
You still look as poor as ever. Don't bring too much dust into the house.
What are you staring at? Get in here already.
They treated us as if we were dirty, and even though I knew what to expect, the treatment still stung. No matter how used I was to being treated poorly, it didn't mean it didn't hurt. What? When we were shown into an obnoxiously grand living room, I was taken aback by the scene. There were 4 chairs with 4 takeout steaks set up. One portion was missing. Noticing the odd setup as quickly as I did, John raised his voice in anger.
Mom, what's the meaning of this?
But Mary, having anticipated his reaction, looked unfazed.
Be quiet. Since you're marrying into our family, you'll follow our customs.
She then glared at me, who was still in shock.
A low-born woman like you wouldn't even be allowed in this house if you weren't marrying the younger son. Be grateful and do your duties.
I hadn't expected this. I had anticipated that they might demand money or gifts during the engagement ceremony, but this was a whole other issue. It was as if they were outright declaring that they had no intention of accepting me as part of the family.
What are you standing around for? You have no sense, do you? Hurry up and bring the drinks.
At Sarah and Mary's commands, John's face turned red with anger. Charles pointed at him and sneered.
What are you getting mad about? You should be grateful they're even holding an engagement ceremony for you. Normally, marrying a poor woman like that would have been enough to cut ties with you.
Exactly. You should be thanking me, John.
John lowered his head, his expression hidden. I was left in shock at the depths of this family's cruelty, something I'd come to realize all too clearly over the past few days. Seeming pleased with our silence, Mary continued with a smug smile.
I'll allow you to marry Catherine, but in return, I found an apartment nearby for you both to move into. Who knows what kind of embarrassment you'd cause us if we weren't keeping an eye on you. From now on, I'll be supervising and teaching you every step of the way.
Aren't you generous, Mary? Most wouldn't go this far for their second son, John.
Exactly. Well, as his mother, I have to make one last effort for his sake.
Sarah and Mary seemed to get along very well. It looked like Sarah was going out of her way to keep Mary in a good mood.
Hey, Catherine, how about saying thank you at least?
I'll make sure she learns proper manners from now on.
John, who had been sitting quietly with his head down, suddenly tensed up.
Proper manners. Yelling at a grown woman to do chores and not even setting a place for her at lunch. That's what you call teaching?
Oh, men just don't get it. That's a wife's duty. You should leave everything to Mary and stay out of it.
When John raised his head, his face was shockingly blank. I could immediately sense that he was angry, but they didn't seem to notice. Or maybe they did notice, but simply didn't care that John was upset.
It's also your responsibility, as the second son, for bringing someone like her into the family. Making your elderly mother take on her education is downright inconsiderate.
Right. We should have known better than to give him so much freedom.
Charles quickly agreed with Mary. What awful people. It's unbelievable how cruel they can be to someone they consider beneath them.
That's right. From now on, you'll need proper training as well. Don't think you'll get the same lenient treatment as before. When I call, you'd better come straight to the house. Understood?
Also, you should start repaying us for your education costs. You're an adult now. That's only fair, isn't it?
To them, John and I seemed nothing more than stress relief servants. They looked so pleased as they insulted us.
I paid for college with scholarships, and I never got a single allowance from you. Are we talking about high school expenses? Unlike Charles, I went to all public schools.
Living expenses aren't free. Do you have any idea how much it costs to raise you?
I wonder if Charles ever paid back the money they supposedly spent on him. Judging by his smug grin, it seemed unlikely.
In any case, the two of you must obey me. You can repay me at $1,000 a month, and since I lost my husband, you'll be responsible for taking care of me in my old age. After raising John, and now taking on Catherine's training, that's the least you can do, right?
That's my mom for you.
With those words, John and I immediately understood. Charles wants to offload Mary's care onto us. Mary, eager to stay in her beloved Charles's good graces, has undoubtedly decided to treat us like servants. It's truly astonishing. How can they be so shameless? So, what about my lunch?
What? After all that, you still don't get it. You don't get lunch. Do you understand your position here? You're just the wife.
Mary's words were quickly echoed by Sarah.
And on top of that, you've married into a family you'd never even dream of associating with. You should be grateful and work yourself to the bone. Once everything's done, eating leftovers in a corner of the kitchen is more than enough.
Technically, Sarah held the same position as a daughter-in-law, but it seemed she saw herself as being on a different level. She shot Mary a fawning look.
Right, Mary?
Exactly. You really understand, don't you?
Seeing me stay silent, the two laughed even louder, clearly getting carried away. They assumed I wouldn't talk back.
This is what we call proper training for a daughter-in-law.
I exchanged a glance with John and nodded. Well, we're leaving.
Me too.
What?
Mary let out a dumbfounded noise at the sudden declaration.
Hey, you think you can just leave without a proper farewell?
Apologize to Mary.
They kept shouting, but there was no need to pay them any mind. We had planned to let family interactions fade out gradually, but at this point, it was clear that a quiet disappearance wasn't going to work. In that case, a complete and final break was the only option.
Don't think you can ever come back here again.
We wouldn't dream of it.
You'll regret this, mark my words.
Ignoring their shouting, we calmly got into the car and left John's family home behind. When we returned home, John's phone was flooded with missed calls from Mary.
I really don't want to answer, but what should I do?
It's the last time, so do whatever you want, John. I had no family, and now John was officially cutting ties with his own. Despite both becoming essentially alone in the world, we felt surprisingly calm.
Well then, I might as well say everything I've wanted to and end this.
Sounds like fun. Relieved and unburdened, John had a refreshed expression on his face. As he operated his phone, Mary's shrill voice immediately came through.
John, what was that about earlier? How could you humiliate me like that? I didn't raise you to be this way.
Mary once again put on a fake, tearful voice to make her plea. It was baffling that she didn't find her behavior embarrassing. But John, clearly used to her tactics, didn't so much as raise an eyebrow.
I don't recall you raising me. The people who were kind to me and took care of me were the household staff. You and Dad were always focused on Charles.
You had staff? Wow, you really were well off. I whispered, and John flashed a mischievous smile.
Yeah, my dad was the CEO of a big local company. Though things aren't quite the same now.
As we talked, Mary's tearful voice continued to leak from the phone.
How can you say such an ungrateful thing? Do you know how hard I worked to raise you? Who do you think made it possible for you to go to college?
Probably my teachers who helped me study hard enough to get a scholarship, and friends who supported me. You might not remember, but when I said I wanted to go to college, you and Dad said, not a penny for the second son's whims.
For the first time, Mary's crying stopped. It seemed she remembered. I was speechless at how terrible Mary's words were. Is this really how a family talks? And to think people who prided themselves on being wealthy could say such things to their own child. It's unbelievable. They had the money but refused to invest in their own child's education because they thought it was a waste. Apparently unable to come up with a counterargument, Mary started sobbing again.
Why can't you just listen to me? What did I ever do to you?
But John, having finally shed even the last bit of family loyalty he had left, coldly replied, as if he had never agonized over dealing with them.
And just so you know, there's no legal basis for children repaying their parents for the cost of raising them. So if you bring this up again, I'll be consulting a lawyer.
What did you say?
Goodbye.
Mary continued shrieking, but John hung up, having said everything he needed to. Right after, his phone rang again with Mary's number, but he calmly blocked her, then did the same for Charles and Sarah's numbers.
That felt great.
Seeing the refreshed look on John's face made me genuinely happy. Tonight, it looked like we'd finally get a good night's sleep. But it wasn't over yet. On the day of our move, Mary, Charles, and Sarah showed up at the house. Of course, our new address was different from the apartment Mary had supposedly found for us. We'd purchased our own home, independent of her control. We have our own jobs, so we can't just cater to the schedules of such self-centered people.
Hey, we welcomed you into the family, and this is how you act? Mom was so upset by your behavior that she was bedridden for 3 days. You owe us damages.
What? Since the excuse of repaying child-rearing expenses was no longer usable, it seemed they'd moved on to a different angle. When I responded with a look of disbelief, Charles's face turned red as he started shouting.
Hey, what's with that attitude? Are you mocking me?
I apologized to the moving crew. Sorry for the trouble. Please go on ahead with the truck. No problem. That must be tough. Thankfully, I'd warned them there might be some complications, and they were understanding. Then John and I turned to face the 3 unreasonable visitors.
We recorded our conversation from the other day. Between us and you, who do you think would be liable for defamation? We're happy to take this to court if you'd like.
John's cold stare made their expressions change instantly.
What? Greedy, aren't you? How shameless to threaten us like this.
That's an invasion of privacy. Don't think you can make any money off this. I'll get my lawyer to crush you.
This is criminal behavior. How disgraceful. What kind of child are you?
They were the type who could endlessly insult others and try to take money from them without seeing the hypocrisy of their own actions.
For the record, it's called one-party consent recording, not eavesdropping. As long as one party in the conversation records it without the other's consent, it's legal. Eavesdropping isn't even a crime. You could have looked this up easily. After all the belittling you've done, and that's what you come up with, I'm honestly speechless.
John, who had been calm and passive all this time, had turned uncharacteristically assertive since the engagement ceremony. Perhaps caught off guard, they stared at him, speechless, with wide eyes. It was satisfying to see. Since you took over the company from the previous CEO, its performance hasn't been great, has it, Charles? And yet, none of you seem willing to adjust your lifestyle. Instead, you're cutting company expenses. It's shocking to think they're on the verge of being pushed out by their own employees due to all the resentment. After all their high-handed talk, it's ironic that they're the ones in a corner.
How did you know that?
It's best not to say anything more. It could be used as evidence. Charles quickly covered his mouth, but it was already too late. Not that it matters. A quick check of the numbers would reveal as much anyway.
A simple look into things would tell you that. Your company is supposed to be a major local business.
We'd already suspected as much during the engagement ceremony, but learning this only confirmed it. They had pushed for our marriage and kept meddling because they wanted servants.
They left me alone all this time, then tried to make me and my wife their servants and maybe squeeze some money out of us. Sorry, but we're not that naive.
John was absolutely right. They never showed him an ounce of love, yet they try to exploit him the moment it suits them. I can't understand what kind of mindset allows that.
Did you actually think I'd follow your demands? After all the neglect, You're coming at me now with nothing but entitlement. There's no way I'd ever feel inclined to help you.
I looked at them, their faces flushed with anger. Their bodies were trembling slightly, likely unable to understand why John was speaking to them this way. If they could, they wouldn't have fallen so far as human beings. So full of pride, yet you can't manage your company or personal lives. And you can't even ask for help properly. It's pathetic.
You! Who do you think you're talking to?
My words seemed to be the final blow. Charles, face flushed, lunged toward me, but John stepped forward to shield me. John immediately stepped in front of me to protect me. As Charles tried to grab him by the collar, John calmly sidestepped, avoiding him with ease. Ignoring Mary and Sarah, who were frozen by the scene, I dialed the police. My husband is being attacked by an assailant. Please come quickly.
What are you doing? Stop that.
Realizing what I was doing, Charles lunged toward me. But John was quicker to act than he was. After dodging him up to this point, John twisted Charles's arm and pinned him to the ground.
Don't get too full of yourself. I let things slide before because we were family, but I don't consider you family anymore.
Damn it. Let go. Don't touch me.
Charles was desperately shouting, but no one was listening to him here. In the end, still yelling pathetically, he was taken away by the police who had arrived on the scene. I didn't expect him to actually get taken in. I wonder if his company will be all right after this.
It probably wouldn't be with or without him.
At our conversation, Mary and Sarah, who had been pale and trembling, jumped in.
Excuse me, what's that supposed to mean?
What do you mean it won't be okay? Don't act like you know.
It seemed they still didn't fully understand their position. Didn't Charles mention he had a major deal coming up soon?
How did you?
Realizing her slip, Sarah quickly clammed up. They're both truly foolish people. They keep making the same mistake over and over in such a short time. Even then, Mary kept up her arrogant attitude and sneered.
So what if he does?
Well, that deal is with our company. Mary was left speechless.
Impossible.
Sarah shrieked, but it was true. John and I have been not only a couple since college, but also business partners. Together, we developed a successful health management app, which led us to establish a company specializing in medical apps. Now, the company has expanded into a large business that includes e-commerce sites for cosmetics and pharmaceuticals, review apps, and even partnerships with national projects. Since they've never shown interest in John, they likely had no idea. In fact, when talks of a deal came up with our company, Charles didn't realize it was connected to us at all. To us, their company was just one of many clients, handled by an account manager, so there was never a reason to meet as business owners. Even so, if he'd bothered to check, Charles could have found our names in the executive team. But he got so caught up in the idea of landing a big deal that he didn't think that far ahead. Or perhaps, looking down on us from the start, he never considered the possibility. That's why the company he inherited from his parents is now on the verge of failing. After looking into it, we found that Charles' company is in serious financial trouble, so we've decided to cancel the deal. This isn't because of how poorly we were treated. It's simply a business decision as responsible owners. We're sorry.
Let's just say it wasn't meant to be. This conversation is over.
As soon as we turned to leave, Mary clung desperately to John. It seemed she had finally realized just how disadvantaged they were. Unfortunately, her realization came too late to make any difference.
Wait, how can you treat an elderly woman like this? Don't you care what happens to us?
When I was in middle school, Mom, you told me, I don't care if you wander around late at night and collapse somewhere. Just don't bring shame to our family name. If you do end up collapsing, make sure it's far enough away that no one links it to us.
Mary's face froze, and John gave her a polite smile.
Well, I don't care what happens to you either. Stay out of our lives, and whatever happens, don't ever mention our names.
Please don't bring shame to our names. After all, we're not family. Mary stood there in stunned silence, but Sarah, visibly shaking, suddenly turned on her, grabbing her by the arm.
This is all your fault for not keeping a closer eye on John.
What did you say? You have no right to talk with your reckless spending habits.
You're the one squandering money at your age. This is all because of you.
Realizing they couldn't beat us, they turned on each other, shifting blame back and forth. For people who'd conspired together for so long, their bond was fragile. Please don't behave so disgracefully. You're embarrassing yourselves out here.
Wait, please listen. I only did it because she forced me.
No, it was their idea. I didn't want to do any of this.
Behind me, Mary and Sarah were making pathetic excuses, but I had no intention of turning back. We hadn't shared our new address, so this should be the end of our connection. And if anything else comes up, we're fully prepared to take it to court.
Let's go.
Don and I got into the car and left, following the moving truck down the road and away from them for good. After that, Charles's company bounced a check, causing a huge scandal, and with a criminal record now attached to his name, Charles was forced to step down as CEO. Currently, the employees who ousted Charles are working together to rebuild the company. Meanwhile, rumors about the conflict with us, the company's financial troubles, and the employee uprising spread quickly. Unable to stay in the area, the three of them sold their home and moved to a more remote location. However, unable to break free from their long-standing habit of lavish spending, they continued their lifestyle even without any of them working in management, quickly finding themselves buried in debt. Since we had already severed ties with them, we ignored any attempts they made to contact us for money. For a while, we'd hear occasional updates about them through the grapevine, but now there's been complete silence. With their personalities, I figured they'd eventually destroy themselves, and it seems I was right.
How's Toby doing?
Hi. He's happily playing. After everything, we successfully held our wedding, and the following year, we had our first child. I'm currently on maternity leave.
Daddy's home.
The company is doing well, and John seems busy every day. Still, he told me he makes an effort to come home early to see our son's face as much as possible. And indeed, he looks so happy whenever he's with our child.
I didn't get along with my family, so I want Toby to feel loved and happy.
Absolutely. I want both you and Toby to be happy.
You're forgetting yourself, Catherine. You need to be happy too.
Seeing John's genuine smile, I couldn't help but smile back. You're right. For someone like me, who had no family before, I now have an irreplaceable one. Thinking of that chaotic time before the wedding as something necessary for this happiness, I can let go of any lingering bitterness. Right now, I feel truly happy.